Imagine standing on a flat, frozen expanse of the Eurasian steppe. The air is so cold it feels like glass shards in your lungs. Then you hear it, a low, rhythmic thrumming that vibrates in your teeth before you even see the source. On the horizon, a line of steel and olive-drab uniforms appears, stretching as far as the eye can see. This isn't just an army, it's a force of nature. At its peak, the Red Army boasted over 11 million soldiers. To survive against them isn't just a matter of skill, it's a terrifying exercise in statistics. Most people think they'd be the hero of the story, the one who beats the odds, but history suggests otherwise. Today, we're putting you in the crosshairs. We've broken down the challenge of surviving the Red Army into 11 escalating levels of lethality. From the chaotic logistics of the rear guard to the absolute meat grinder of the front lines, we're going to see exactly how many days you would last before the weight of the Soviet Union finally catches up with you. Level 1 starts with the basics, the logistics void. You aren't even at the front yet. You're 100 miles behind the lines, and your biggest enemy isn't a bullet, it's the sheer scale of the operation. In the Red Army, the individual was often secondary to the objective. If you're a civilian or low-level worker in the path of their advance, your survival depends entirely on your ability to stay invisible. At this level, the Red Army is a slow-moving mountain of men and machines. You might think you can just hide in a cellar, but the Soviet doctrine of deep battle means they aren't just taking the road, they're taking everything. If you can scavenge enough food to survive the first 48 hours without being pressed into a labor detail, you might make it. But most people at this stage succumb to the total lack of resources. Everything, every scrap of bread, every gallon of fuel is being diverted to the war machine. If you don't have a plan to stay fed and warm, your journey ends here before the first shot is even fired. Level 2 brings us to the partisan shadow. Now the environment is actively hostile. You've moved closer to the action, and the landscape is crawling with irregular fighters. These aren't just soldiers, they're locals who have lost everything and are now waging a war of attrition. To survive Level 2, you have to navigate a world where there are no clear front lines. Every bridge is a potential ambush site, and every forest hideout is a target for scorched earth tactics. If the Red Army suspects you're a sympathizer for the other side, or even just an obstacle, the NKVD, the internal police, will find you. This is where the psychological toll begins. You have to endure the constant paranoia of being watched. Surviving 5 days here requires a level of tactical awareness that most people simply don't possess. One wrong word in the wrong ear, and you're gone. Level 3 is the scouting party. You've stumbled onto the edge of a reconnaissance unit. These are the eyes and ears of the Red Army, mobile, fast, and incredibly aggressive. They aren't there to hold ground, they're there to find you so the artillery can finish you off. If you're spotted by a Soviet scout, you have seconds to react. They utilize light tanks and motorcycles, and they are trained to engage and then disappear. This is a game of high-stakes hide-and-seek where the seeker has a submachine gun. Survival here means understanding the terrain better than they do. You have to move at night and remain motionless during the day. Most people would panic, try to run, and be cut down by a burst of fire from a PPSH-41. To reach Day 10, you need to be a ghost. Level 4 introduces you to the Iron Rain, Soviet artillery. In the Red Army, artillery wasn't just a support weapon, it was the god of war. When the Soviets decided to take a position, they didn't just fire a few shells, they deleted the grid square. Imagine thousands of guns firing simultaneously. The ground doesn't just shake, it liquefies. To survive Level 4, you need to be in a deep, reinforced bunker. And even then, the pressure waves alone could burst your lungs. There is no fighting back against artillery. You just sit, pray, and hope your cover holds. Many soldiers describe the sound as a continuous, deafening roar that stripped away their sanity. If you can survive a 12-hour bombardment without losing your mind or being buried alive, you've made it past the 2-week mark. But the worst is yet to come. Level 5 is order number 227, not a step back. Now the stakes are personal. You aren't just fighting the enemy in front of you, you're being pushed by the threat behind you. This was the reality for many Soviet soldiers. Retreat was seen as treason. At this level, survival means moving forward into certain death because the alternative is a summary execution by your own side's blocking detachments. This is where the human wave myth comes from, though it was often more about tactical necessity than mindless charging. You are part of a massive infantry push against a fortified position. Your life expectancy here is measured in minutes. To survive, you need luck that borders on the miraculous. You're running through minefields and machine gun fire, surrounded by thousands of others doing the same. If you're one of the few who makes it to the enemy trench, you've survived the most intense 30 minutes of your life. Level 6 is General Winter. We've mentioned the cold, but level 6 is where it becomes your primary antagonist. During the winter of 1941, temperatures dropped to minus 40 degrees. At these levels, oil freezes, metal becomes brittle, and exposed skin turns black in minutes. The Red Army was better prepared for this than almost anyone else, but it was still a brutal struggle. To survive level 6, you need more than just a coat. You need a source of calories that your body can burn fast enough to generate heat. You're eating frozen bread and horse meat, huddling together in dugouts where the only warmth comes from the bodies of other men. This isn't about combat, it's about biological endurance. If you can survive 20 days in the Russian winter without losing your toes to frostbite or your life to hypothermia, you are in the top 1% of survivors. Level 7 brings us to the urban labyrinth. Think of Stalingrad. This is the Rathenkrieg, the war of rats. Every room is a fortress. Every sewer is a highway. You aren't fighting over cities, you're fighting over piles of rubble. In Level 7, the Red Army's sheer numbers are channeled into narrow corridors and stairwells. Survival here is a matter of reflexes. You might be eating dinner in one room while a Soviet squad is drilling through the wall in the next. Grenades are more common than bullets. To survive a month in this environment, you have to become a predator. You need to know which floorboards creak and how to move through shadows. The casualty rates in urban combat were astronomical. Sometimes entire regiments were wiped out in a single day of fighting over a grain elevator or a factory floor. Level 8 is the Steel Wave, the T-34. Now you're facing the most iconic tank of the era. The T-34 wasn't just a machine, it was a revolution in armored warfare. Fast, well-sloped, and produced in staggering numbers. When a division of these tanks crests a hill, your options for survival vanish. Unless you have heavy anti-tank weaponry and the nerves to use it, you're done. The psychological impact of tank panic, the feeling of helplessness as a multi-ton slab of steel rumbles towards you, is enough to break most people. Surviving Level 8 requires you to stay calm under the most terrifying pressure imaginable. You have to find a way to disable the tracks or hit the engine deck with a Molotov cocktail. If you fail, you aren't just shot, you're crushed. Level 9 is Stalin's organ, the Katyusha rocket launcher. If you thought the artillery in Level 4 was bad, the Katyusha is a whole different level of nightmare. These truck-mounted rockets would launch in salvos, creating a terrifying whistling sound that earned them their nickname. They didn't have the precision of traditional guns, but they had incredible psychological impact. A single battery could saturate a huge area with high explosives in seconds. To survive Level 9, you have to anticipate the strike. Once you hear that whistle, it's usually too late to move. You have to hope you're in the small percentage of the impact zone that isn't vaporized. Reaching day 40 against this kind of weaponry is a feat that few historical veterans could claim. Level 10 is the deep battle encirclement. This is the Red Army at its peak. They don't just hit you, they surround you. Using massive pincer movements, they cut off entire armies from their supply lines. Suddenly, you aren't just fighting, you're trapped in a cauldron. There is no food, no ammunition, and no way out. This is the end game for most. To survive Level 10, you have to lead or participate in a desperate breakout attempt against a closing ring of steel. It's a chaotic midnight run through enemy lines where every shadow is a threat. If you don't break out, your only other option is a Soviet POW camp where the survival rate was often less than 10%. Finally, we reach Level 11, the drive to Berlin. This is the end of the road. The Red Army has mobilized everything. They have the most experienced soldiers, the best tanks, and an unstoppable momentum fueled by years of brutal warfare. At this stage, the Soviet force is a juggernaut that consumes everything in its path. To survive level 11 means surviving the final, most desperate defense of a crumbling empire. The sky is black with Soviet planes, and the ground is shaking from the weight of tens of thousands of tanks. To survive this, you have to be one in a million. You have to navigate the total collapse of civilization while being hunted by an army that has finally reached its goal. So, how many days did you last? Most people wouldn't make it past the first week of logistics and cold. To survive the Red Army was to survive a collision with the largest mobilization of human effort in history. It required a mix of iron discipline, tactical genius, and, most importantly, pure, unadulterated luck. If you enjoyed this dive into the harshest realities of history, make sure to hit the subscribe button and ring the bell. We have plenty more survival scenarios coming your way.